Last week, Microsoft Ignite had a bunch of great announcements, but when it came to Azure, the picking seemed a little slim. Which, while they had some cool innovations and services announced, the focus seemed to be more around Microsoft 365. But to be fair, the lines between 365 and Azure are getting blurrier every day. Today though, instead of diving deeper into any particular technology, we're instead going to look forward at what the future may hold for some of the new tech and updates announced at Ignite, and even discuss if digital conferencing is becoming the new normal. Get your crystal ball ready, because we're going to work on that clairvoyant skill to predict the future in this month's Azure Level Up. It's hard to say which announcement at Ignite was the most significant, as Microsoft had some doozies. From your typical service improvements like added features to Azure Arc, to whole new features such as Azure Orbital, we got to see some really cool reveals coming to the Azure cloud. I know I, for one, am looking forward to the option of Mega Godzilla Beast Server. You cannot not enjoy saying Mega Godzilla Beast Server. I mean, the specs are impressive, running 448 cores and 24 terabytes of RAM, but the name is all I'm really after personally. But looking forward, there were some mentions of technologies that we should all keep an eye out for, as they changed the game just a little bit. One such announcement was Project Bicep, an evolution of the ARM template that is supposed to be drastically easier to write and understand while still offering the full functionality of ARM templates. ARM templates seem to get overshadowed by technology such as Terraform or Ansible. However, Microsoft isn't giving up hope that it can potentially convince users to utilize native tools to run their infrastructure as code workloads. Looking at some of the examples in the GitHub repo that Microsoft has made available for people to check out, Bicep really does seem easier to use and manage, which could make some waves in deploying resources through code. While I've always been a bigger fan of using tools like Terraform, I think it's safe to say that Bicep brings Azure one step closer to having a product that can truly go toe-to-toe with the likes of AWS's CloudFormation or even third-party tools like Terraform. Bicep is certainly a step in the right direction. Microsoft Orbital is a space nerd's playground, as it creates pay-as-you-go access to ground station links to satellite data. While it's not particularly revolutionizing anything, it does bring a much-needed service into the Azure ecosystem. Orbital gives companies access to satellite data without the need to build or lease ground stations for your own company. With Microsoft officially winning the $10 billion Jedi contract, it's no surprise they're pushing the service into the spotlight, although we'll probably see this used more in the Azure government space. This isn't to say commercial application isn't a target, as this does allow companies to access low-cost satellites without the added expenditure of a ground station lease or maintenance. But to be frank, the cheapest satellite launch I could find in like 5 minutes of searching the interwebs was $50 million. Who the heck has that kind of cash lying around to hurl a giant computer into space? It'll be interesting to keep an eye on this one, and how companies end up using this technology. Maybe the next step is satellites as a service. If anything is becoming more clear, it's that Microsoft is continuing to break down the distinctions between its Microsoft 365, Dynamics, and Azure offerings. It seems with every conference I attend, I'm hearing more about how you can leverage Power BI, which is technically considered part of the 365 suite, and Power Automate, which is essentially Logic Apps Lite for 365 and Dynamics, to pull data out of Azure to be used for any number of reasons. It's always a highlight at every talk, how you can use tools that are from other offerings to bridge gaps in your data needs or perform automations that make processes less likely to suffer human error. A huge push Microsoft has made has been its low or no-code movement, which with things like Power BI and Logic Apps, we're seeing widespread use even in Azure. Microsoft is trying to lower the bar of entry to allow people to develop usable, robust tools and data analysis that previously would have required a veteran developer to create. Particularly in security is where we're seeing Microsoft consolidate their products into single panes of glass. Security Center previously gave you a roll-up of recommendations and shortcuts to where you could go to remediate issues. But now, Microsoft is rebranding that as Azure Defender and Microsoft 365 Defender, which are meant to act as tailored experiences in both Azure and Microsoft 365. You can then really blend Microsoft 365 and Azure realms with the use of Azure Sentinel to centralize all of that security data. You can use that data to generate reports or alerting that creates a true central monitoring system to control your cloud. It's likely over time we'll see more cross-platform functionality begin to manifest in interesting ways. For example, imagine a company using Windows Virtual Desktop in Azure. You could have a workflow that when a user is created in 365, it not only uses dynamic groups to assign permissions, but it also provisions a desktop for the user with all their needed applications and resources ready to go. Its functionality, I'm sure, could be tuned today, but the idea that this type of thing could be turned into, say, a Power Automate workflow makes it require less administrative or code knowledge and more just the ability to figure out what's the most efficient point from A to B, click and drag. Since January, we've all had to deal with what seems to be a constantly shifting landscape of digital conferences, with vendors trying new things all the time. Microsoft really seemed to have found its stride with Ignite 2020, as sessions started on time, the breakouts went smoothly, the audio and video quality was acceptable in most cases, and engagement with the audience through Q&A sessions went fairly smoothly, at least in the sessions I attended. Part of me wants to hang on to the idea that one day we'll be able to go back to flying out to locations where companies like Microsoft can wow us with the latest and greatest technologies, connect with our peers in person over a pint, and get all that sweet, sweet swag. But considering how much less expensive it likely is to put these digital conferences on, and how much more widespread the information can be when you take away the need to travel or buy an expensive ticket, you can't help but wonder, is this the beginning of the end for traditional conferences? I personally would love to see more innovation with digital conferencing, as it enables people who would traditionally be unable to attend due to cost, travel restrictions, or unplanned emergencies to be able to access the knowledge and networking shared at major conferences without having to figure out a way to take a week out of their life to go to a separate location. I know I have some people screaming at their screens, and believe me, I'm with you. I love being in person at these events, but I also think everyone should have a chance to attend these events, and I think more and more companies will start to hold more events like these, and we'll at least see a shift towards digital conferences more in the future, even if life goes back to the way things were. Feeling the strain of peering into the future yet? Yeah, me too. Good thing I always have this 8-ball. It's always right most of the time. The future is an uncertain thing, and anything can change in an instant, especially in technology. There are two things you can count on in life: death and Azure changing its console UI at least once a quarter. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on what the future of Azure looks like. Think I'm dead wrong? Let's talk about it in the comments. Have an idea on how Orbital is useful for more than government? I'm all ears. Give us a like if you enjoyed this video, or let us know how we can make it better for you below. If you missed last week's episode on the Azure Ignite announcements, go ahead and go give it a watch now. I think you've got the experience necessary to hit your next milestone and obtain the Seer of Tech title. Congratulations on leveling up, gurus. We'll get you back to your regularly scheduled llamas with Lars next week. But remember, as we say here, when we can't figure out super catchy achievement names, seek and you shall cloud.